Sino?
Ay, ganito pala.
Yes.
Letter B po, Gento.
B, ganire, B, Gento. Okay. Let's give a round of applause to everyone. Thank you for being participative. Please listen to the wonderful speakers up ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very fun icebreaker, Ryan. I'm pretty sure everybody here is now energized and ready to listen to our first speaker. Am I correct? All right. So, before we actually get into the specifics about using music for business, it's only right that we properly situate this workshop in the context of the Philippine music industry. And that is where our first speaker comes in. Representing Musica Pilipinas, an organization with the goal of investigating how to cultivate and improve the Philippine music industry as a competitive cultural and socio-economic sector of the country, our speaker graduated with distinctions from the University of Santo Tomas in 2022 with a degree in classical guitar performance from the university's Conservatory of Music. He has since served as a writer, researcher, and research assistant at the university's Research Center for Culture, Arts, and Humanities, primarily delving into the musicological studies. And he is currently a managing staffer of Musica Pilipinas. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Mr. Leon Lopez.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate the invite. We're pretty used to cramming on our preparation, so we were more or less prepared for this. I think maybe that's a musician's trick. Not to put anyone down, but I will be presenting a summary of the findings of Musica Pilipinas. Some of you may have encountered this research organization before. It's a research program with a team that serves as the organization's body. So I was told that the presentation of our materials would set the mood, would set the tone for this study. Okay. I was told that this would be a way to situate where music business happens within the industry. A disclaimer, no? We're part of a larger ecosystem. The music industry is, strictly speaking, when you talk about industry, you talk about a product in exchange for resources or for commodities in exchange for cash. No? But the ecosystem it involves several layers of our society. All these layers, they have to be healthy in order to produce, in order to proliferate a healthy ecosystem for which music can thrive in. Our project has, in the last 2 years, attempted, and I put emphasis on attempted, to encapsulate the music industry in its entirety, and it's been a challenging process, but it's also been very rewarding. Before I begin, I'm Leon Lopez. I'm a project officer at Musica Pilipinas. I'm accompanied today by my associate, another project officer for the project, Ms. Jess Nepomuceno. And we'll be taking you into what we've been doing in the last 2 years, right? A lot of branding. Okay, so what is Musica Pilipinas? It is a research project. Musica Pilipinas is a research project undertaking funded by the National Research Council of the Philippines, or NRCP, and it's implemented by the UST Research Center for Culture, Arts, and Humanities in relation to the Republic Act number 11904, or the Philippine Creative Industries Act. Don't know if anybody's familiar with this. I'm sure some people here are today have come into some form of contact with the implementation of this Republic Act. No? And I'm here to present the first phase of a currently 2-phase project. So this project is entitled Research and Mapping Towards Understanding, Defining, and Scoping the Philippine Music Industry. And the team completed the first phase of the project in 2022, in June of 2022. Right. Better understanding the significance of this research project, it aims to encapsulate the dynamics between stakeholders in the industry. Stakeholders scattered from all parts of the industry. So from the distribution side of the industry, which comes in many forms, which comes in the form of streaming or publishing. Collecting societies are also a very, very big part of this industry, of this part of the industry. But also A&R, also record labels, up to the building blocks of the industry, which are the artists themselves, and down to the last stage of the industry, the cycle of the industry, which is the consumption of music, right? So we have two general objectives. One is to provide a comprehensive baseline of the economic performance, rather the economic standing of the Philippine music industry. And the second is to identify prospects for which the industry can grow, touch points for which we can act upon, so that the industry might diversify. We're currently working with the local government unit of Olongapo. As you know, as some of you might know, Olongapo has a rich history in creating artists, songwriters, but more than that, producers too, of music. And they have a rich tradition and a history that supports that kind of culture. And I'll be showing you shortly where these parts of the industry lie. They're all situated. They're all related. History, origins, cultural origins of certain demographics, of certain places, of certain peoples, how they're related to the music business. Okay, let's go to the theoretical framework. Here you see the mapping parameters of the study, which utilize the cultural institution studies approach by Austrian musicologist Peter Schmuck. This was discussed in his book, The Economics of Music, which is readily available on Amazon, I think. It was published in 2017. And it aims to understand how cultural goods are transformed into cultural commodities, right? Those are two different things. One is in exchange for a monetary value, and the other has a cultural value, but they're tied. Ultimately, they're tied together. And one of our other resources, frameworks that we used for this study was the Microeconomics of Competitiveness by Harvard professor Michael Porter. This is an old economic study. I'm not an economist, disclaimer. We have a big team, we have a large team of researchers, and we have researchers to detail on certain parts of the study. And I'm here representing the musicological side of that study. Okay, so aside from those frameworks, we had primarily two or three methods for data gathering, right? One was a besides the literature review, there was a data collection via a national survey, an online national survey that was launched in May of 2022. It ran for 2 weeks to about a month, and then we started analyzing the data in around June of 2022. Aside from the survey, we also conducted several focus group discussions. I see familiar faces here actually, and so I know that some of you were invited to these FGDs early on. And then we also had supplemental one-on-one interviews, which were held via Zoom also. During this time, I think we were just coming out of COVID during this time. So one of the challenges of one of the limitations of this research actually was that it was almost completely conducted online during that time, which also presented a challenge in terms of connecting with or establishing rapport with certain institutions from which we needed data, right? So we had a hard time convincing people that we were legit in a matter of speaking. We had no branding. we were just given the funding by a government agency, but there was no, we had no backer in that sort. So a lot of our struggles stemmed from not being able to reach the stakeholders that we would have liked to include in this preliminary research. Again, this is part of the first phase of the project, which was a 9-month long research project in 2021 to 2022. Right now, we're currently in the second phase. After this, we submitted the results to our funding agency, and they approved us for the second phase of the project, which is a 3-year endeavor to write a roadmap for the development of the music industry, along with a few other deliverables. Right. So this is the part of the 9-month project, which ran from September 2021 to June of 2022. Okay. We also methodologically speaking, we used a mixed methods research design, which involved data that was collected through said instruments: the online survey, the focus group discussions, and the one-on-one interviews of the stakeholders of the music industry. And in addition to this, we tried to gather reports from private and public entities, collecting societies, record labels, even umbrella organizations of collecting societies or societies involved with the collecting of data for the, let's say, the recorded music industry, right? CSAC, IFPI was definitely one of our sources. We used the publicly available report, which was the report of 2021, I believe. Right. Just to give you a detail on the number of companies, we tried to contact 8 companies actively in the industry, and we also used Facebook as it was the most accessible means of distributing our instrument at that time. Our survey was answered by around over 700 participants, which is a small number if you're going to come up with data to suggest the landscape of a country, right? Especially our country. Land borders pa lang, no? Geographical borders pa lang. We have different kinds of cultures from different demographics because we're separated by water. We're separated by all these geographical, I wouldn't say they're geographical hurdles, but they're geographical literal landscapes. No? And so we have different cultures from different places. So I don't think they're we're coming to terms with the limitations of our description for the music of the demographics of the different demographics in the country. And regarding the FGDs, there were a total of 10 FGDs conducted on seven different days, and there were around 94 participants from the different subsectors of the industry. Here are some of the participants of our FGD. A lot of them are music educators in this study. I think in this particular study, or I think they're this was part of the FGD for music consumers. One of those, right? We also interviewed some key figures on the right, on the left side of the screen from where you're looking. Is Mr. Benny Saturno, a very prominent songwriter in the 80s and 90s. And here we have national artist for music, Ryan Cayabyab. And we got to talk to them via the connections we had in the academy. So I guess that paints the picture of how limited din yung scope namin for interviewing. I'm sure there are several resource persons that we have yet to come into contact with. But here's a start. No? It started during COVID. We have to start somewhere. As I'm sure PRM understands it. On the left side of the screen is the son of National Artist for Music, Felipe De Leon. That's Felipe De Leon Jr. He's an NCCA, former NCCA board member and executive director or president, I believe. Okay. now, down to the obvious reason for this study. It's no secret that music is a big part of our culture. There is this study conducted in 2019, which documented the streaming time of Filipino users on streaming platforms like Spotify and YouTube. This was done by This was done by We Are Social. The survey conducted was called Digital, and this was done in 2019. And this was reported in an article on Esquire by Carl Subido. We used this as this particular set of data it's an emphasis. It's just to emphasize how much we patronize music already. Regardless of if it's international music or music from local artists. This is just to paint a picture of what we look like next to our neighbors. And the Philippines has 126 minutes of music listening time daily on average. And the next most listened to country that listens most to music is Thailand, 90 minutes. So the difference is very significant. And the revenue generated is also very significant. So, what then is a music industry? And here we're going to attempt to encapsulate that idea. There are varied ways to define the music industry. There are different approaches that conceptualize the music industry in different ways. Peter Schmuck, the Austrian musicologist that was mentioned, defines it as a network on which the production and distribution of music occur in a process relying on the division of labor and the help of the latest technologies. Oh, 8 minutes. Okay, right. I'll speed it up. So a lot of the industry models that we wrote are based on this book. The music industry may also be defined as a sum of three sectors: the recording industry, the publishing industry, and the live music industry. And these industries have different stages of music making, music creation. We'll get to that in a while, right? Let me just... So, I mean, like, that's what a music industry is based on some Austrian musicologist's definition of the industry. But what is the Philippine music industry, right? We'll get to that in a bit. We've come up with a placeholder for the definition of the Philippine music industry. Okay, so this research project was initiated by the passing of the Republic Act number 11904, the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act, which was primarily written by the staff and the office of Congressman Christopher De Venecia of Pangasinan. I think he's in his last term now, but he's consistently championed this part of industry development. And a lot of his staff are responsible for creating the programs that are now trying to push forward the creative industries, the music industry being one of them. Okay, here you see a classification of creative industries by UNCTAD. This is from a report done in 2008. It's okay, you don't have to take notes about this one. I just want you to see that in the creative industries, there's no bracket and there's no designation for music as a separate industry. During the time that the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act was being written, the latest report of by UNCTAD hadn't been published, so they used this model. So right now, the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act rests on the logic that music is a subsector of one of the industries. I think primarily audiovisual. Nakalump siya with audiovisual. But that doesn't make sense because music industry of the creative industries is the biggest. Data shows it's the biggest, in fact. And we'll get to that in a bit, but you'd be happy to know that they rectified this eventually. When they published a report in 2022, music became their largest income-generating part of the creative industries. So that's promising, kasi at least now, all studies regarding or related to creative industries, they all owe one part to the subsector of music, the industry of music. Okay, here's the latest report, and there you see music is has the largest chunk on the diagram. Okay, let me just skip. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so CSAC, or the International Confederation of Societies of Authors and Composers, is the world's largest network in the creative sector that works to protect the rights of creators across the globe in the artistic field, including music, audiovisual, drama, literature, painting, etc. In 228 societies in 128 countries. It represents the global collective management community where our own PhilSCAP is a member. So this is the umbrella organization. Here, music is the highest contributor amongst the creative industries. Out of the 9.8 total revenue for the year of 2021, 8.3 billion is accredited to music. The music industry has emerged as a key driver in economic growth in the globalized world, and research suggests that it's the same in the Philippine landscape now. And I'd like to share a report by IFPI in 2021. It reported that the Philippines ranked only the 42nd in the global ranking, which was lower than Thailand and Malaysia. This is according to 2021. We don't have access to the latest report, but we're trying to update that within the time frame that we have for the research now. Based on IFPI's figures, 98.5% of the 5% of the revenues of Filipino recorded music was from digital use, including music and video streaming and mobile tones. Paid subscriptions for digital music services grew 265% over 5 years, from 5.5 million US dollars in 2016 to 20.1 million in 2020, accounting for 59.6% of the total 2020 revenues in recorded music. If ad-supported streaming revenues were included, that would be up to 76.5% of total music recording revenues, right? So you see now the problem of lumping music with audiovisual, the audiovisual sector. You can't account for the things that happen within the industry that only support these subsectors as peripheral industries. They still mainly are part of a consolidated kind of industry, which is the music industry. It's consolidated. Sorry. Okay. Right. Okay. Let me speed that up. Here, I was supposed to talk about a little bit about the history of music, but I'm not gonna do that now. I'd like to go to the meat of the report, right? Sorry. Excuse me. The point being that Philippine music history is very rich, and even if we're going to be nitpicky about the origins of Philippine music, the material for which we derive our music, we'd say the Spanish colonial period was very westernized, but we don't realize that these things that happened in our history, they contribute to the consciousness of a singular identity or some sort of identity for Philippine music, right? We don't we have to account for right. If we were going to say that Spanish music is like that's the original kind of music, right? If you go to Spanish history, Spanish music isn't even like their indigenous music. You go back before that, there was Moorish music, pre-Moorish music, there was indigenous music before that. So how do we derive an identity? We have to look at it in the present light. We have to look at it as from the perspective of what music we have currently. And so these sociological events and these historical happenings, they all inform our identity, our cultural identity. Right? Yeah, that was it. It was supposed to be this one, but I'm just going to speed up. Okay. what then is the Philippine music industry? Okay, so this you see before you is a model that we constructed from the review of related literature. Musicologists before us, they had plotted out the music industry as a linear industry, right? You create a product, it's processed, it's distributed, it's consumed, and then that's it. The only thing that we probably contributed to this framework is that we tied up the consumption with the creation of music. Why? Because people who learn, who study music, people who undertake training in music, they use older music as reference. They use existing music as reference. That's the strength of our industry. This industry's product is non-diminishing. It doesn't expire, right? It's just there. And artists come from this pool of existing music. So we try to tie up the industry into a cycle, which we call the cyclic model. The music industry can now be understood as those Filipino and non-Filipino individuals, groups, institutions, companies, and other stakeholders who are involved in the whole process of the creation, production, distribution, and consumption of music within the Philippines. To put it simply, as long as they're creating, producing, reproducing, distributing, or consuming music within the Philippines, or producing music while representing the Philippines, and from whose activities the Philippine economy benefits, they are part of the music industry of this country. What does that mean? Even OFWs who are musicians, they contribute to the industry because of their remittances. I don't know if there's anybody here from DFA, from the Department of Foreign Affairs, but there's a large statistic that's it's usually sidestepped when we think of OFWs. The first kind of OFW that's most prominent are medical workers, workers in the medical field. We would think that domestic workers or helpers would be the second, right? But the second, there is some loose data that suggests that the second is more made up of musicians than it is of domestic helpers. So we're like, musicians are like second on that list of OFWs whose remittances feed our economy. Yeah. So this is the model we developed, and it has been further developed over the course of the study, right? Sorry. So we also acknowledge that it isn't linear in the way that it moves. Sometimes distribution is bypassed. We now have artists that can produce for themselves, that can distribute for themselves. We have accessible kinds of streaming platforms and distribution platforms, right? So some things are bypassed in the industry now. But basically, you have people at the creation side of the industry, which are the artists. Now, you have people at the production side, record labels, A&R, people who develop the artists, that develop the materials, even session musicians. You have people at the production side, right? At the distribution side of the industry. These are the platforms that make these available. These are royalties that we collect. These are remittances that we get from OFWs. And then we have consumption, people who digest music now. And then we have things